Morning to one and all present here. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you to the 30th talk of TransTech Research Talk Series organized by KSCSTE National Transportation Planning and Research Center, NATPAC. Before delving deeper, let me take a few moments to enlighten about the institute. NATPAC is a premier research institution functioning under the Kerala State Council for Science, Technology and Environment, spearheading transportation research, including transportation planning, traffic engineering, pavement engineering, highway design, road safety, intelligent transportation systems, inland water transport, etc., and promotes sustainable development initiatives to mitigate traffic and transportation challenges faced by the state of Kerala. This talk series is yet another unique venture of NATPAC designed to explore diverse topics from cutting-edge technologies to sustainable solutions. Here we will be featuring eminent researchers who will share their valuable expertise and insights inspiring future research and developments in the transportation sector. Today we have with us Dr. Ravi Gadepalli, Independent Consultant, World Bank, Principal Consultant, Transit Intelligence LLP, for sharing valuable insights on the topic, case studies on demand-oriented public transport planning and scheduling in India. Now I request Sri Arun Chandran, Senior Scientist, to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Ashwati. KSCSTE-NATPAC has launched a technical discussion series called TransTech Talk Series, which focus on different aspects of transportation sector. The series is scheduled to take place on second Friday of every month and will feature experts from various transportation fields worldwide sharing their experience and valuable research ideas. The inaugural talk of the series was conducted on February 10, 2023 in an online platform. 100 participants from eminent institutions, department, etc. attended. The inaugural address was given by Professor Dr. Tom B. Matthew, Chairman of the Research Council KSCSTE-NATPAC and Head of the Department of Civil Engineering, IIT Bombay. The first talk in the series was delivered by Dr. Srinivas Pulugurtha, Fellow of IACE and Professor and Research Director of the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, University of North Carolina at Charlotte, on the topic Advanced Crash Frequency Prediction Modeling using GIS. The talk series was then carried forward by eminent faculties and experts like Dr. Rajiv Malik, Professor Jayakrishnan, Engineer Tony Matthew, Dr. Varun, Dr. Sushanta Disanayake, Dr. Neeraj Bush, and Professor Sabhya Misra. The 30th talk in the series, organized by Transportation Planning Division of NATPAC, will be delivered by Dr. Ravi Gadepalli, Independent Consultant, World Bank, and Principal Consultant, Transit Intelligence LLP. It is with great pleasure and enthusiasm that I stand before you today to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speaker, who has graciously accepted our invitation to share insight and knowledge in the realm of case studies on demand-oriented public transport planning scheduling in India. After the presentation, we will have a question and answer session where you can pose your question and engage in a meaningful dialogue with Dr. Ravi Gadepalli. Feel free to participate actively. Once again, thank you for being here today, and let us give a warmest welcome to Dr. Ravi Gadepalli as we eagerly wait the insight he is able to share. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the welcome. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Shahimas, Principal Scientist and Head, Transportation Planning Division, to introduce the speaker to the audience.
Very good morning to all. It is a great pleasure to welcome you all to the 30th edition of the TransTech Talk Series. Today, we are truly honored to have with us a distinguished expert in the field of public transport and urban mobility, Dr. Ravi Gadepalli. Dr. Ravi Gadepalli is an independent consultant with the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank, working extensively on public transport improvement and electric mobility adoption across South Asia. He also leads Transit Intelligence, a consulting firm that supports public transport agencies with service planning, scheduling, and utilization. Dr. Ravi has provided technical guidance for the planning and procurement of over 10,000 electric buses across India and played a key role in mobilizing more than 4 million USD through the World Bank for public transport enhancement and electrification in the region. He has been instrumental in pioneering governance reforms such as the public transport service contract in Chennai, which ensures the long-term sustainability of bus services. Dr. Ravi holds a master's degree and PhD from the IIT Delhi and is a recent alumnus of the Shivling Research, Science and Innovation Program Fellowship at the University of Oxford. Let us move into the session, and I welcome Dr. Gadepalli sir to the subject. Over to you, sir.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Firstly, thanks to NATPAC for inviting me to this distinguished series. So I hope I'm audible. Can you just confirm if I'm audible?
Yes, you are
audible.
Thank you. Yeah, so we are on this Cisco platform, which is new to my laptop, and so it is really acting strange. So I'm taking a minute to load the presentation, so please hang on until then, so we can still continue the discussion. So I've been told that I have about 45 minutes to talk, and after that, maybe in the 15-20 minutes of discussion, depends on your interest. So as I load the presentation, I'd still like to start on the content in general. So first, I'd like to thank NATPAC for recognizing the need to focus on service planning and scheduling as a topic. So, I mean, they've given a generous introduction where they talked about all the bus procurements I've been involved in, which is true. And it is also true that there's a lot of focus generally when there is a procurement involved, which is justifiable because several hundreds, thousands of crores are invested in the procurement, and there's always an audit that happens, which makes sure that it is transparent and the city got the best deal out of procurement, which is all justified. However, so many more hundreds of crores of rupees are spent on operations on a daily basis. And public transport is a perishable asset, right? So once you have a bus, let's say 60 people can sit in it. The moment the bus leaves the depot and operates, you have spent the money already. After that, it's about how best you utilize the asset and have as many people use it as possible. So on one hand, there is a cost and revenue calculation, but the larger objective of public transport is that we want to have more people use it in the first place because we are providing it, but also because whether you take it from a road safety perspective or emissions perspective or a congestion perspective. So public transport occupies the least space on the road. So that's why it is important that beyond just procurement, we have to focus a lot on the service planning and scheduling of public transport because planning is what determines where you operate it. I mean, first, at the fleet level, there is a planning exercise happening on we are at X number of buses, we need to reach X plus Y or X plus 2Y, or so there's a particular overall fleet level planning that happens in terms of the overall service level to be provided. That is one where again the procurement happens and there is a significant interest from politicians, from the decision makers and so on. However, plan after you procure, so how do you plan in terms of the route network layout? Where exactly do you operate the buses? And the scheduling of the buses. So when do you start, when do you end, what time of the day, what is the peak hour, off peak hour? So because eventually for the end user who is waiting at the bus stop or who is deciding whether to take public transport in the first place or not, service planning and scheduling is what actually matters. So eventually ridership is the ultimate objective of public transport, and service planning and scheduling determines how much ridership we will eventually achieve. So I will present the slides in a bit, but so as we on this, so this is my PhD topic also, to improve data-driven service planning and scheduling. because if you see many of the bus agencies in India, so they have typically been operating the same way over the decades. We haven't really evolved significantly. So the way operations are planned is that our bus corporations have evolved from a rural intercity bus operations background. So what happens there, what used to happen there, I mean, is that, okay, you have certain number of buses, you have all these villages and towns that you need to cover. So what is the best way to get the buses out of the depot in the morning, and you cover as many villages, towns you can cover and come back to the depot. That is straightforward. That's the rural public transport scenario. Intercity is even more straightforward. There are two cities, Trivandrum, Kochi, or some other city, and okay, you just run buses up and down, and they serve whoever they can serve. And previously, the situation was that you just operate the bus and people would use them. However, over a period of time, we all know that people have many more choices. They have their own personal vehicles, there are private commercial transport services. So in this environment, even though for the user it may be convenient to use their private vehicle, as a city or as a government, that is not desirable because of congestion, air quality, road safety issues. Given this, how does public transport be in a competitive environment but still attract as many people? So we need to provide a service that is comparable for the user's personal vehicle travel experience. And if you are a personal vehicle user, there is a vehicle at your home. You get out of your home, take your vehicle, reach your destination, park it there, and you use it, right? It's straightforward. With public transport, there is a little bit of extra effort involved. You need to go to the bus stop, wait for the bus, then take it, get down, then walk to wherever you need to walk, and so on. So in such scenarios, so unless the system is a little more demand oriented, people may not actually choose to use it, and which is what many bus corporations across India are observing, that over a period of time, so the ridership has been reducing. So can someone just confirm if you can see my slide?
Not yet, sir.
Okay. Yeah, so just please give me a minute. According to my laptop, it shows it is sharing. So how do you provide private transport equivalent service? So we need an understanding of where the demand is, where the supply is better. The point I was mentioning is that over the years, how about now? Can you see the screen now?
Not yet, sir. If you send the materials, we will share from our side, sir.
I think you can share the entire screen.
That's what I'm trying to do actually. Yeah, sorry about this. Like I said, WebEx is something that's new and that's causing some issues. So I think it is saying make sure that you're allowed permission to share content and try again. So can you just check if I'm allowed
Yes,
the permission?
actually give permission, sir. Just try it.
Okay. You gave it just now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ashik, I think you might have given the permission
Yes.
for the phone. Maybe in the laptop you'll have to give.
Yeah.
Dr. Ravi has joined from two systems,
Yeah.
it seems.
Yeah. So Ravi Gadepalli _TI. So can you just share permission for that?
Sir, that has been given. Can you please try once again?
Yeah. Actually, it's not working.
Material.
Yeah. It's a bit of a heavy presentation, so it is not in PDF. So let me just do that.
Ashik, that underscore T1 is not presenter, just co-host. Will it do?
Are you talking to me? Yeah.
Yeah. Can you try once again? Now we are made the presenter.
Okay. No, it says it's not. I don't have the permission. That's what it says.
Then please forward the Ashik. Please give the mail ID in the chat box.
Okay.
Chat.
Yeah, my sincere apologies to all the audience who have been on the call. So I hope we can extend this by 15 minutes or so that we have time to discuss in detail.
Yes, no issues.
Thank you.
We have shared the mail ID.
Okay. Yeah, I got it. I'll send it. So I'm doing that in parallel. So I'll continue the discussion. So what happens as a bus operator is that there are conflicting objectives. So on one hand, people want service immediately all the time. On the other hand, there is only limited fleet available. And the other thing is you can either, there are conflicting objectives in terms of users' expectations versus what the authority can practically provide. So there is, on the authority side, there is the fleet constraint. There's only so much fleet available. There are financial constraints because every kilometer you operate, there is a difference between cost of operation versus service delivered. So, and then there is the constraint on the crew side. For example, there is the bus can operate for 16 hours technically. If it is an electric bus, it needs charging. That's another constraint. But the crew typically operate in shifts, right? So the shift will be generally for 8 hours, maximum of 12 hours based on the Motor Transport Workers Act. So in that case, you need two sets of crew typically, and there is the bus, and on top there is a route constraint in terms of physical availability of roads infrastructure, the bus stop infrastructure, the turnaround place and time. So if all of that is available or not is another constraint. So in such scenario, so what are the different trade-offs cities have to operate in? So as we did that in a few cities, and we tried to help the cities optimize their service towards meeting these constraints. I mean, eventually we need to realize that there is only so much the city can actually do. So which is the bad news, and so we have to live with it, unfortunately. So in such scenarios, so how does we have worked in Bangalore, Delhi, Rajkot over different projects to understand how to optimize these constraints. So in Bangalore, apart from the bus operations itself, by the way, the other constraint cities are facing is that all the bigger cities are now getting a metro rail system. And there is a continuous discussion on whether, okay, now that the metro is here, can we move the buses aside so that metro gets more ridership? And separately, even if there is no metro, there is competition from the shared auto rickshaws, for example. So they are always also providing commercial transport service. And so cities have to, a lot of times cities look at paratransit as a competition. However, my PhD is actually on understanding that problem, whether paratransit is actually competition or enabler of overall public transport service in the area. So I didn't have those in the slides. So while the slides come up, I'll just explain that what we found is paratransit caters to a different clientele, buses cater to a different clientele, and metro caters to another clientele. So one from a socioeconomic perspective and also from a travel characteristics perspective. So the typical share auto rickshaw user is using it for a 2 to 5 kilometer trip length, whereas a metro user is generally at 10 kilometers or longer trips only. And the bus users are in between actually. So typically from 5 kilometers till 10 kilometers is where the sweet spot is for buses, particularly in urban conditions. Of course, in rural areas, it's different and so on.
Excuse
so the
me.
presentation has been sent on email. So whenever it is available, please share it on the screen.
Have you shared?
Yes, just now.
Okay. Yeah.
Have you received it? Yeah, you'll receive it. So it is, so broadly, of course, there is always a little bit of competition and there is crossover demand between services. But the price point as well as the travel characteristics indicate that there are different users for different services. So a lot of times, while the bus agencies look at the parallel modes as a competition or the system against which they need to attract demand, what we observe is that the internal services are not efficiently organized, and the focus should be more on internal reorganization of services based on passenger demand rather than focusing on the competing mode. So if you have to go about understanding how to reorganize internally, so the public transport planning as a science has evolved over 4 or 5 decades or more. I mean, relatively compared to the typical transport science itself, public transport is actually an evolving field. Only since 1960s, even the first paper on this is from the 1960s onwards. Okay, finally we have the slides. Thanks a lot. So maybe you can go on to the third slide directly. So when we looked at Bangalore, so all the points that I mentioned, competition with the metro, competition with other services, go to the next slide, please. Can you put it on full screen? It's on the top right corner. Yeah. So why will people choose a system versus not choose a system? There is this paper from 2013 by Hagen and Braun, which shows that there are some dissatisfiers, which means that if that does not work, people just won't use the system at all. And that is a given. And beyond that, there are satisfiers, which are good to have kind of things. So that will not determine your service, but there will be some population that requires that also for sure. So the base is service reliability and safety. Safety, we generally everybody agrees. However, service reliability is something that's not really focused upon either by transport planners or the operators. The transport planners generally focus more on travel demand characteristics. And we are typically taught deterministic methods, right? So if there is so much population, if this is the per capita trip rate, you get X number of trips, and this is the mode choice model where there's a utility function linked to travel time, cost, whatever, and you determine an OD matrix, and then you assign the OD matrix to the network and say, okay, this should be my demand. Eventually, you'll figure out that is good on your model, but on the ground, the reality will be a bit different. And that's where the service reliability comes in, because there are people's perception changes. So reliability first, then speed. First, if you want to know when the bus will come, and it should come at that time. But if it comes only once in half an hour or 1 hour, you would not take it anyway. So you need to have speed, which means that buses operate more kilometers, and you reach your destination quickly, and also there's more service frequency. Then the ease of use, more. Then comfort and experience are in the about overall end-to-end. So towards that, as a bus operator, that's what people want. But what do I do to reach there? So as a bus operator, there are several layers of decision making. Strategic planning is longer term, over the next 3 to 5 years. Layout, and what is the typical frequency setting that I should do? Like on this route, it's a trunk route, so maybe every 5 minutes I have a bus. This is a rural route with the objective is more of access to the service rather than continuous service, because there's not enough demand. So at the network layout level, you have frequency, based on which you do a tactical planning exercise, which is generally recommended to be done every 3 months or maybe 6 months, where you prepare the timetable, because timetable is a function of the travel time of the bus. So frequency just says you get a bus every 5 minutes, or you have 3 buses per hour kind of thing. Then timetable actually gives stopwise when does the bus arrive, for which you need to take the actual travel time on the route as a variable. And for that, you of course need the traffic characteristics keep changing, and so you need to update it more periodically. Then there is operations planning, which is more of a day-to-day operations in terms of vehicle scheduling. When does the bus leave the depot? When does it reach the terminal? And then the rest of the trips. Crew duty scheduling, like I mentioned earlier, crew and vehicles have different schedules, and we need to match the two. And crew rostering is more about which individual is taking which bus at what time and so on. Another thing that's not shown here is the electric bus related items. So this is a traditional way of planning and scheduling or the flow of events. Apart from this, there is electric bus related aspects in terms of taking up the constraints of the range, charging time available, number of chargers available. So those are also that need to be taken up. If you go to the next slide. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so in route network design, so today I'll focus more on the route network and scheduling side. So in the route network design, what are the various conflicting objectives that the city needs to take care of? One is the accessibility, second is the reliability. So why is it conflicting? Because everybody everywhere in the city wants a bus next to their house, and immediately as soon as they come out. However, if you spread your network pretty thin, then the services available will also be spread out, and so it is difficult to ensure that people have a reliable service that, okay, I go to the stop and I'll definitely get a bus. You'll have a bus at some point in the day, but it won't be a reliable service. Then there is inclusivity. Where are the different income groups living in the city, and are we catering to all income groups at the same time? Then the network simplicity. Can I recall the network that, okay, 100 series buses go to a particular destination, 200 series some other destination? And finally, the financial sustainability, because while providing all of this, the corporation has to run. So then there is different things, performance evaluation, route curtailment, all of these activities. So in a greenfield city where there is no base service, you can always plan well because you're starting afresh. But in many cities, there is an existing network. So you need to do a bit of re-engineering of the existing network to extend routes, curtail routes, and then maybe propose some more routes. And there is also the route to depot allocation. The other big constraint cities have is they have land in a few places, but services need to be everywhere. So which depot should I operate the bus from so that I serve my network efficiently is another constraint to be solved for. If you go to the next slide. So I have been working with BMTC, the Bangalore Metropolitan Transport Corporation, for 7 years now, actually. In fact, 8. So over the past 8 years, I've been working on different things. A lot of focus was on electric bus procurement, but it was in phases. There is interest in service planning, scheduling. So I worked a little bit on that. So I'll explain what we have been doing and our findings. So this is not officially accepted by BMTC. These are my views, and this has been published in public domain and so on. So it is public information. It's just that this is not BMTC's view, my view. I just wanted to clarify that. So Bangalore actually is the biggest or the second biggest compared to Delhi, after Delhi. So the network is quite well spread. You see here that the inner circle is the municipal limit, then the development authority, and the larger metropolitan area. So there are several routes, almost 2,000 routes and stops everywhere. However, if you go to the next slide, so the service is concentrated in a few locations only. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So you will see on the right that the dots are the terminal locations where buses start or stop. So this is traditionally the bus service in Bangalore, where from the city center, the Majestic bus station, KR Market, Shivaji Nagar bus station, these are the old centers of the city from where buses have been operating for decades, and they continue to operate even today there. And on the left, the image shows the high frequency service in terms of how many corridors have at least 10 trips in a day is what we try to plot. So you will see compared to the previous slide that only a few corridors actually have high frequency service. So if again, this is the conflicting dilemma for the operator, right? Either you provide for everybody everywhere or a few people high frequency service. So at this point, you can say that Bangalore prioritized accessibility over frequency. So that's a policy decision. There is no right or wrong answer. It's just the way the city decided to provide service. However, in the process, what happens is as a user, your service frequency and reliability is compromised, and the ridership gets reduced over a period of time. So even though the bus fleet has been the same all over for a decade almost, and the population grew by 50%, the ridership has been declining. And then there was a free bus scheme, and because of which many more women started using the bus, and so the ridership increased again. However, the big picture trend is that the network stayed constant, the city evolved, and so the ridership reduced. Can you go to the next slide? So we also tried to plot where people need them. Oh, this is an animation, it won't work anymore. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so we looked at the job density and the population density. The previous chart shows the OD matrix of ticketed demand users, which shows that even though the network is concentrated in the city center and goes radially outwards across the metropolitan area, the demand centers are many more, and there are many shorter trips. Actually, the average, like I mentioned earlier, the average public transport trip length is 5 to 10 kilometers, and if the route lengths are 25 to 28 kilometers. So the bus keeps going on and on. People get in, get out, get in, get out. So what happens in a very long route is that your service reliability is out of your control, because if you have 25, 28 kilometers, the bus goes through several points of congestion. I mean, you can argue that everywhere it is congested, even if it is everywhere being congested or high demand nodes, because bus gets delayed, you can't cover it up. So it gets added on and on and on until the end of the day. If it is a shorter route, you can adjust a little bit, or you have more control of your schedule. So that was what I tried to show in the previous slide. In this slide, the population density, this is back in 2011. So things have changed a lot, but we don't have a census. So that's what we have. The population is in the city center, which you can say, okay, that's what the buses are covering. So we are all good. However, the jobs are growing more on the eastern periphery. There is ITPL, Whitefield, Electronic City. These are massive nodes for the new age employment in the city. So even if people are living in the city center, they may go here for their jobs. And there are many more people living here also, but we have no data on it. So, so if people need the service here and the service hasn't evolved to meet them, obviously it is likely that the ridership would reduce over the period of time. And in the next slide, we show that, So that's the network layout, which is the route network design. Then the schedule part. So there is a crew constraint across bus corporations in Bangalore as well, because of which the services have over a period of time evolved to have single shift operations. So instead of 2 8-hour shifts, so there are many 12-hour shifts in BMTC, which means that people take over at 7 or 8 in the morning and operate for 11 to 12 hours and leave in the evening. So as a result, what's happening is after 5 or 6 p.m., the actual services delivered have reduced because of the crew constraint. But in general, we know that the evening peak is between 5 to 7 goes until 8 p.m. So when people need the bus the most, the buses are not on the road, and hence you are missing your peak demand. And when we looked at services which have 2-shift operations, almost 60% of the demand happens in peak hours, approximately 30% in the morning, 30% in the evening. And so if you don't even cater to the peak, there's no way you can get the ridership, right? So that's so we need to redo the schedules to meet this requirement. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah, apart from the internal problems, there is also the internal issues, not problems. There is also the metro network that's expanding. So all of it is not live at this point. So only 2 lines are currently operational, but the rest are coming up in the next 2 to 3 years. All of this network will be active, close to 200 kilometers of network. And they are the trunk routes of Bangalore. So we mapped whether the bus services are competing or complementing, or do we need a new feeder network, or is the existing service already a feeder? So how do you determine that? So we looked at the overlap. So on what is the length of each route overlapping with the metro network, and what percentage of its route is overlapping. This is important because the route lengths are 25-28 kilometers. Even if it is overlapping for 5 kilometers, it's just 20% of the route length. So the rest of the 80% of the users would still need the bus. And even these 20% users may or may not be able to afford the metro, so you might still want the bus to continue. So when we looked at the length of overlap, almost 70% routes are overlapping for 5 kilometers or more. But in terms of percentage, actually more than 60% of the route is overlapping for less than 40% of its length. So even if there is overlap, the percentage of the route itself is limited. And in the next slide, we show the demand. So because we know the ticketing data from stop to stop, we looked at all the stops which are within 300 meters of the metro station. And if our assumption has been that if both the origin and destination are within 300 meters of the metro, people are likely to shift, have potential to shift between bus to metro. So what we found was that in case of overall, there is 38% of the AC buses trips are in this vicinity, and 60% of the non-AC bus users are in this vicinity. So you can argue that maybe 38% of the AC trips can potentially shift because they are already paying a premium on bus fare, so they can afford the metro also. So there is a substantial impact on the AC bus routes. On the non-AC bus routes, we need to do more evaluation, even though it looks like 60%. Many of them may not be able to afford because they are bus pass users and lower income groups, which may not prefer the metro. The other thing is the trip length. So even though 60% is in the vicinity, so majority of them actually don't travel for longer than 5 kilometers. So after reducing that, we found that a maximum of 30% across the corporation can potentially shift. So 70% would still, the one way of looking at it is 70% of the services will still be on the bus. So we are all good. So let's continue doing whatever we are doing. But 30% impact on ridership is massive. So you might as well reorganize your network because the city is growing and the metro is not growing as fast as the population growth. So there are many more areas which need to be served. So from the bus corporate, this is what I meant by demand-oriented planning, where you understand overall travel demand patterns and then reorganize your network. Either you change routes or strengthen the routes accordingly. So one of the points I didn't highlight is that out of Bangalore has 1900 routes. Out of those, almost 1500 routes have only one bus per route. So that's because they are predominantly seen as rural routes. If you can go to the next slide. So based on all of this impact, okay, now we understood what's happening. So the key messages until now are that we need more high frequency routes to attract demand. Second is we need shorter routes because long routes have difficulty in maintaining reliability. The third thing is that we can look at the metro bus overlap and redo based on other areas which have demand but not services. So towards doing that, so what we identified was that the city has 12 trunk corridors where there are more services than the rest of the city. So this is one corridor as a demonstration on the approach that we recommend. So this is Kengeri Road, which is towards the northwest of the city. There is a metro line exactly parallel to this road, and there are 106 routes out of the 1900 routes operating on this. Out of 106, only 2 routes actually have more than one bus. The rest are all these rural routes with just one bus. So if one bus is operating for 25, 28 kilometers at a speed of 10 kilometers per hour, you, in a best case scenario, you will get a bus every 4 hours. So it's not really reliable service, but you have a service to show. So if you can go to the next slide. So what we looked at is, we looked at the demand. So one typical point that always comes up is that, oh, but people want to go to the city center. How can we reduce routes? So, but when we looked at it, even though the routes are so long, 14% of the percentage of the population or the users of the bus are between the city center to Kengeri, which is the so Bangalore has a nice structure. There's a proper outer ring road within which majority of the city lives and works, and then outside the outer ring road. So we looked at that as a cutoff point because there is turnaround space available for the buses to come back if required. So 14% of population just, 14% of ridership is just on this side of the city, 52% is only on the other side, and the remaining 33% is crossing over from either direction. So we don't need all the buses going to the city center. That's the key point. So 33% crossing over is the only population that need bus to go to the city center. So based on this logic, we actually split the route, saying that let's say we only have route going until Kengeri and coming back, and also routes on the other side from the city center to Kengeri. And then there will be transfer at the Kengeri location. Then 30% of the people have to cross over, but 70% of the people have better service because you have shorter route length, you have higher frequency. So there was concern saying that, okay, but 30% have to transfer, that's a lot. Can we go to the next slide? So the key point is, if you are inconveniencing 30% of the population, people are worried that you might create noise, which is not desirable.
Friends are not there.
Yeah, so we looked at the service improvement policy. Based on this. If you go to the next slide, so that's the predominant approach we recommend. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So
I
now
told you 100, no, that time.
North, this is Delhi.
It's the new one.
In Delhi, there is the
New one for
metro as
35
well
only.
as.
Why it
Hello,
doesn't
Mr.
this look
Mohan,
like
if
a
you
new
can
one?
mute yourself.
It will correct.
Maybe the organizers can
What we say?
stick with that.
The dust will get deposited on it.
Great, thanks. So in Delhi, Delhi is a city with 7,500 buses, right? So there is the metro network, which is very popular for the users using the metro. But from the city's perspective, the metro is available at 390 kilometers. I mean, which is great, which is the longest in India. But for Delhi itself, that only covers a fraction of the 25,000 kilometer roads in the city. However, it gives proper reliability frequency, so people using it are very happy, but only certain percentage of the people can use it. Buses are everywhere, much larger. On the map on the right shows the bus stops and the intensity of service. However, the service frequency here, again, similar to Bangalore, it's not as bad as Bangalore in terms of service frequency, but even here, only 1/4 of the routes have at least 4 buses per hour or 15-minute headway. And 1/3 of the routes actually have, again, just one bus in each hour. Again, the reliability is a problem. So if you can go to the next slide. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so one is service coverage looks great everywhere. It looks like a bus available everywhere. We also did accessibility analysis, which is from a given point, if you have a limited travel time budget, because we don't want to endlessly spend time traveling, right? We travel because we have to do other things in life. We have to study or go to office or do whatever. So you have limited time. How in the limited time we have, how many destinations can you access in the city? So the leftmost point shows the accessibility by the metro, which is sparse. Because, I mean, let's say even with the 60 minutes, the darkest blue one is 60 minutes. Even if you have 60 minutes, you can only cover some parts of the city. So whereas but you can see that where the metro is available, you can cover many destinations within 30 minutes and many more within 60 minutes. If you see the bus, majority of the city takes more than 60 minutes to reach your destination, partly because the road speeds are lower than the metro speeds, but more importantly because accessibility is a function of your access to the bus stop, wait time, and travel time. So the wait time is so high that you can't actually reach many places within an hour. And the last one is a combination of bus and metro. If that exists, then the accessibility improves significantly. However, the services are planned independently, and so that may happen by chance for some users, but it is not by design. So next slide, please. And again, the same peak hour issue is observed even in Delhi. So the left is the metro service and supply and demand. So the yellow line on the left, shows the metro supply. Metro supply actually peaks in the evening at 8 or 9 p.m., which may not be desirable also because, that's oversupply when they don't need it. But if you see the blue lines, which is the demand of metro, so that is actually going until 7 p.m. as the evening peak, 7 to 8 p.m. On the right is the buses. We see that again in Delhi also the buses are peaking at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. and then the services are declining after that. So we worked on this problem over the last 5-6 months. There was this Delhi Innovation Challenge where we participated in one. So we are doing a proof of concept of our schedule optimization tools for Delhi DTC and DIMS. And I'll present some of our results for only one route as a demonstration. So if you can go to the next slide. So here I'll focus on the scheduling side for Delhi. We haven't worked extensively on the network design. So here, what are we solving for while we are doing timetabling and vehicle scheduling? So the first thing is to maximize peak service. So whichever city you take, transport is a peak hour problem. So there is morning peak, evening peak, you want to maximize service there so that on the user side, they have better service and for the operator, there is more ridership and revenue. Second, you want to efficiently use your fleet. You don't want fleet to be idle or crew to be idle. You want them to be maximizing their availability. Then the travel times need to be realistic so that the services are reliable and punctual. So we need to know for different hours of the day the actual travel time and incorporate that into the schedule. Then electric bus range and charging constraints and the financial cost benefit analysis constraints. So if you do all of this, what will be delivered is the punctual service to the user, increased ridership revenue, and the contractual obligations. Because a lot of electric buses are contracted out and there is payment for 200 kilometers every day, for example. So you need to operate those kilometers, otherwise you'll be paying for actually lack of service also. So can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so when we looked at DTC, so there is DTC and DIMS, two bus corporations, Delhi Transport Corporation and the Delhi Integrated Multimodal Transport Service. Both are publicly operated bus services in the city. So just DTC's numbers show that currently, out of their total services, 10% of their daily kilometers are dead kilometers, which is from the depot to the route origin point, where it's not actually a revenue-making route. You're just moving because you need to start somewhere. Then the actual kilometers per bus per day is 190 kilometers, while the scheduled kilometers is as much as 230 kilometers. So each bus is supposed to operate 230, but actually operates 190. So those are cancelled kilometers. Almost 70,000 kilometers of service is planned but not delivered. So, and again, the evening peak declining after 5 p.m. is an issue across corporations. Yeah, if you go to the next slide. So we then went to 2 depots so we estimate that addressing these constraints can solve the corporation almost 400 crore rupees annually, which is substantial. I started with saying that a lot of focus is on procurement. This is why I mentioned that point. Actually, so just by focusing on operations planning and scheduling, if not 400, even if you save 200, even if you save 100 crores, there is no actual capital investment towards saving this money. And this is a recurring cost. Every month, every day, every year, you are making unnecessary losses. Part of them, I mean, there are losses due to affordable services, which are, of course, required. However, there is a loss due to inefficiency, which can be mitigated at more from analytical perspective, more than installing some more hardware to solve this problem. Yeah, if you can go to the next slide. So I presented at network level. If you see within each depot, eventually the buses operate with depot as a unit. So let's say 2 depots, Rajghat and Hasanpur are 2 depots we are working with. So in this, so the top table gives all the routes and their details. If you just look at the second table, there is shift 1 and shift 2. So like I said, buses operate in 2 shifts. So in the evening shift particularly, it is observed that there is more delay. So outside delay is the bus leaving the depot is called outshedding, coming back is insetting. So the average delay across buses is 15 minutes of delay compared to the schedule, and it comes back 20 minutes beyond scheduled time. So that is because that's more in the evening, almost 3 times more in the evening compared to the morning, because evening peak speeds are lower, and the schedule doesn't account for the actual speed on the road. So it is estimating a particular time and delivering something else. So the next slide shows the numbers for Rajghat, Hasanpur. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So the similar story in the other depot also. So can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So this is a speed profile of what is scheduled versus what is actual. So the red lines at the bottom are the scheduled speed across different route segments. So it is typically in the 15 to 18 kilometers per hour speed range. So, but the yellow and blue lines show the actual speed during the day. So, I mean, it is intuitive that in the evening, after 9 p.m. and until 5 a.m., 6 a.m. in the morning, the speeds are quite high, more than 30, 35 kilometers per hour. But during the day, I mean, in the morning, between 5 to 9 a.m., the speeds reduce to around 20, 25 kilometers per hour. During the day, they are around 18 to 20. But in the evening, they are actually lesser than 15 kilometers per hour and go down to 10 kilometers per hour also. So this is one basic input to improve service reliability. But doing this actually is difficult or impossible to do manually, because you need to look at travel time for each trip separately. You need to, like I said, there are several constraints. You want to meet your headway requirements within available fleet, and then also take the travel time into consideration. This is a hardcore operations optimization problem. Yeah, it is called as the NP hard problem, which is which means that you can't solve it in a polynomial time availability. So it is an infinite problem. It goes on and on if you leave it to the computer. So we need to pick some boundary conditions and solve for it heuristically. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so I just show one route, like I said, there's one route called GL23 with 10 buses, 10 in the morning, 10 in the evening, and a certain scheduled kilometers. Go to the next slide, please. So, and the other thing with scheduling is that the buses don't really operate up and down on the same route. So because the crew has 8 hours, so there may not be enough time for exact round trips to happen all the time. So what bus corporations do is they may do 1 or 2 round trips on the main route and use the remaining time to do some cut trips to some other destination which may not even be on the route. Which is what we observed here. All these colors, this is a bar chart which shows each row is a bus and its start time, depot time, and time on each depot on each trip. So you see that from the 8 to 9 a.m. So the buses start in such a way that the 8 to 9 a.m. when and 9 to 10 a.m. where buses are needed the most, there is a gap in service because the crew started at a particular time and 4 hours later they need a 30-minute lunch break as per the Motor Transport Workers Act. So the schedules are currently in such a way that you are actually giving your break in the peak hour. So we tried to solve for that and also incorporate the e-bus constraints, travel time constraints to do a revised schedule. If you go to the next slide. Yeah, so we have a revised schedule which I'm not showing because that's a lot of Excel tables, but we have a before-after comparison. So what we are doing is we are changing the outshedding times or the time at which the bus leaves the depot, adjusting a little bit so that the buses start a little earlier and take the lunch break before the peak hour, and then have more services, which is the orange columns in the peak hours in the morning and the same in the evening. So in some cases, we may reduce. So like I said, the cut trip that they do, so AV to KG, KG to AV is the main route in this case. And the other 2 columns are the cut trips. So what we did is to prioritize the main corridor for peak hours and reduce trips in the side corridor. And that's our proposal at this point. It's submitted for them to implement. So it is approved but not implemented. So but it's almost at 80-90% maturity level. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah, this is across all the segments. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, so last example I'd like to show is the Rajkot city's example. So Rajkot is a much smaller city, of course, with 2 million population compared to the other 2 that I presented. However, even in this small city, almost 46 routes are longer than 18 kilometers, which means that the bus either goes out of the city or within the city, it's a circuitous route. So we try to clean up the network a little bit. Can you go to the next slide? So Transport for London publishes this network planning guideline. So where the key characteristics of the network are defined. So it should be inclusive, reliable, frequent, simple, financially sustainable. So we try to apply those principles in the case of Rajkot. Can you go? This is a GIZ funded project and hence all the logos below so that I give adequate credit there. Can you go to the next slide, please? What we saw, actually the point about reliability frequency is just not a theoretical concept. In case of Rajkot, we observe that the city has almost 23, I mean, when this data point was shared with us, the city had 100 buses. Now they went up to 175 almost. So out of 100 buses, only 1/4 of the buses operated on the BRT there, which is just one corridor, which is 10 to 11 kilometers or so. And 75% of the buses are in the rest of the city on their own routes. However, those 75 buses had almost 40 routes, or the way they operated is that each route had only 2 buses, one starting at each direction and going up and down all day. So that's a clear example of what impact frequency has. The BRT has 23 buses, but on a 10-kilometer corridor, just operating at a reliable and high frequent service because it's a dedicated bus route. The rest of the city, it is less frequency and less reliable because it's in traffic condition. And the per bus daily ridership on a weekday is only 350 passengers per bus per day in the rest of the network compared to 1200 passengers on just one corridor. So that shows how important frequency is for people in the same city, the same population, choosing frequent service over unreliable service and low frequent service. So our whole objective of network redesign has been to increase frequency to dissolve some of the routes which are not necessary and try to increase frequency. So the next slide, please. I know we have crossed the time, but I'll just take 2-3 minutes and next slide. Apart from just the bus network, we also looked at the paratransit or the shared transport services, shared auto rickshaw routes on where they are operating. So when we had to identify high frequency corridors, we needed to know where to prioritize for high frequency. And the best way to know is where shared auto rickshaws are, because they are profit oriented, they only operate in high demand corridors. So we extracted the high demand corridors. And the next slide. But okay, that is a high demand corridor, but where should we start and where should we end? So we looked at passenger trip patterns on paratransit to understand the OD patterns for these paratransit services, to know which are the key nodes where we need to start and end service to attract maximum demand. Next, please. Next. Yeah, so this is the current service on the left. Yeah, the previous slide. So the current service, like I said, is distributed across the city. The thick blue lines are the high frequency corridors. One of them is the BRT, the rest is bus service. So majority of the city actually doesn't have high frequency service. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, so what we try to do is that we have a hierarchy in the service saying that not every route is equally important based on travel demand and the city structure. There are some trunk routes which need to be prioritized, but even on the trunk route, there is a rural service requirement or suburban service, because every big city has a lot of hinterland where everybody is coming to the city center. So you need to facilitate that, but within the city, users also need high frequency service. So we identified the trunks and identified the suburban routes and the urban routes, urban corridors, and we mapped the routes against these corridors to identify which route needs high frequency service, which ones can just continue at the current level. The advantage the city had is that they are getting new buses under PM E-Bus Seva and some state schemes. So there is potential to augment service. So you need not always remove routes to add on service frequency in other routes. So you can, when you're getting new buses, that's a good opportunity to actually strengthen the service also. Next slide, please. Yeah, so based on this, we have also proposed an inner ring road route to connect all the corridors also, apart from the trunk routes we identified. And we also mapped the existing services against these corridors, like I said, to reduce the number of routes. Next. Yeah, so I think this is what I wanted to share for today. So thanks a lot for your patience, and sorry about all the tech problems that I faced until now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your excellent presentation, very informative presentation also. So the session is now open for discussion. To start with, I will ask one or two things. So, as a public transport is concerned, to attract the public transport, we need to have the first mile and last mile connectivity. So, what are the things, the policies that we have to implement for increasing this first mile and last mile connectivity? So, you have any experience in any other cities in India that promote the first mile and last mile connectivity for bus services? The second one I want to ask regarding the accessibility. So, issue is that the public transport have some cities having less coverage. So how to increase the coverage means in the walking distance, preferable walking distance. Maybe some say it is 300 meters, some say it is 500 meters. So what is the most acceptable walking distance to the bus stop that we need to consider for our planning purpose? Then the other thing
Yeah.
is that we are implementing so many policies. Example, for Bangalore, we are a woman-free transportation buses like that. So what is the impact of that policies in the mode share? That is increasing the mode share of public transport. These are my some queries.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you, sir. So I'll start from the last question. So what is the impact on mode share is actually a big point. The impact on ridership, I can tell you that BMTC ridership just before COVID was 35 lakhs. And during COVID, of course, it dropped significantly. It took a bit of time to come back, but it never reached 35 actually until the free bus scheme happened. And now it's gone up to 40 lakhs. So you can say, I mean, if it was not for the free bus travel program, BMTC over the years has, I mean, at one point it was 50 lakhs daily ridership until in 2016 or 17. So over the last 7-8 years, it has come down to 35 lakhs. If you leave it as it is, it would have come down even further, maybe. However, because of the free bus schemes, it has, instead of dropping it, there's a net increase in ridership. But I'm expecting that the mode share itself has declined because the travel demand in the city is growing at a much faster rate than this, actually. So I mean, Bangalore's population is 13 million people. And so even if the per capita trip rate is 1.5, let's say 20 million trips happen every day. So out of which only 4 million are on the bus. So which is 20%, right? I think the mode share has declined over the years, despite the free bus scheme. So that's why my observation is that so free bus scheme is more of an equity issue, but ridership is a service frequency issue. So your ridership and not just ridership, mode share will increase only when you have higher quality service, which can attract private vehicle users. However, that hasn't happened, right? So there are several cities which introduced free bus scheme, Delhi, Tamil Nadu, and other places. So broadly, the focus has been on individual-centric things rather than the operator-centric things, which is service planning. Again, I go back to the original topic. Second point on the first question was on accessibility and on what is a 300 meter, 500 meter. That's the second question, right?
Yeah,
So
correct.
first, what is the average trip length? I feel that 400 meters is a reasonable access distance to the bus stop. Beyond that would not happen. Ideally, it should be 300, but I think until 400 is acceptable. So the logic is that so the walk time is typically taken as 4 to 5 kilometers per hour. So there is this concept called Krigman curve, which says that if your access plus egress is more than 40% of your travel time, you would not choose the mode. So the logic is if you have a 6 kilometer, 7 kilometer trip to make, so you estimate the 40, you take your existing bus services as trip length and the travel time, and take 40% of it and assume that that is the access egress time that people are currently having in the city. And based on that, you can estimate for the future. But as a generic principle, irrespective of the city, I would say 400 is the maximum we should take as a planner. Then the feeder services, again, when anywhere we do our user trip characteristic surveys, 90% of bus users only access it by walk. So for people to choose some other mode to get to the bus stop and then take the bus is quite expensive. In fact, even when we propose that you have shorter routes, the biggest opposition comes because people have to transfer and you have to buy another ticket. So the shorter trips are charged more per kilometer. So the cost of service increases. So people are resistant to just doing the transfers. For them to choose another mode and use the bus is actually a small fraction. So as a planner or as a city authority, if I have limited time and money and budget, so I would rather focus on within network things more than access egress. I mean, access egress is primarily by walk more than the feeder service. So I would focus on walk access improvement to the network rather than focusing on feeder service to the bus. But if it is a metro, you can still think of it because again, the Krigsman curve principle, if your trip length is 10 to 15 kilometers, then you might spend more time on access egress, in which case it makes sense to have a motorized mode to access egress. So does that, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you, sir. Sir,
Thank you.
Sir, another question in chat box.
Yeah.
You will read it, sir. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so the question says that travel demand from overall OD matrix is a challenge. You should use multimodal integrated transit network for analysis. So for the bus OD itself, we can directly get it from the agency because they have ticketing data, which is stage to stage, not always stop to stop, but that is acceptable. So we have the bus OD itself directly coming to us, metro OD directly coming to us. But that's the existing demand only. We don't know what the rest of the city is. Like I said, the bus agency may carry to 20% of the mode share or 15% or 30%. So the rest of the city is still potential demand. We need to understand the overall OD matrix to get to this. So the good old way of doing household surveys and projecting from sample to population has happened. And so even there, so the last time I did it was for Visakhapatnam in Andhra Pradesh, where we did the comprehensive mobility plan. So what we did there was to get the household survey at a sample stage, and when we projected it for the population, we calibrated it for the trip length characteristics of the bus users as well as the ridership from the city. So even if the city does not have ticketing data from a origin to destination, they would still have the aggregated ridership number, which we can use to calibrate. Then if you want to do the mode choice and the network analysis, so we have done the public transport network as a separate layer. There are some software, travel demand software, where you can put it as a public transport network itself, where you need to define the stops and give frequency. However, because our cities have paratransit services, if you are modeling for bus and paratransit in the same travel demand model, so using the public transport layer in travel demand models cannot give you the full result according to me, because paratransit services don't have predefined stops. They operate as a flow, right? So broadly, they know which corridors to operate on, and they just keep providing service. They stop at different places. So for that reason, when we did the multimodal public transport model, bus and paratransit in the same model, we didn't choose the separate layer, but it's a headway-based assignment that we made rather than. So there are two ways of assigning trips in the travel demand model. There is headway-based model, and then the actual stop-to-stop OD matrix-based things. Timetable-based model is the second way. So we didn't use timetable-based model because paratransit doesn't have a timetable. We use the headway-based assignment. I hope that helps. So what is the quality level of service for passengers? So, no, I'm glad somebody asked this question because passengers are not our priority typically. A lot of times our focus has been on the service itself and more from an industrial point of view to increase productivity rather than improving customer satisfaction. So, unfortunately, I have not even been part of any project that measures level of service in the theoretical sense. In Chennai, there is an ongoing World Bank project which I am part of, where we are doing a customer satisfaction index, and the annual funding to MTC is actually linked to customer satisfaction index improving every year. So what we observed is it is currently at 60-65% satisfaction level, and the target is to improve it to 70-75%. But having said that, even when you see Singapore's customer satisfaction levels, so they are at 6.5. So, I mean, if you just look at the supply perspective, our services are not as reliable as what a Singapore bus service would offer. But even there, people are at a 6 to 6.5 satisfaction level. So satisfaction is something, but on a practical day, every day, are we serving them or not? I would say our immediate priority should be more on that and eventually reach satisfaction also. But if you just focus on satisfaction and not on the service, that won't really help us. So, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Our former director, Dr. Samson Matthews, sir, is also with us now today. Sir, Samson, sir.
Good morning, all. Ravi, thank you very much for immediately accepting an invitation at a very short notice. Of course, we had a good interaction at Bangalore,
Yeah.
and Ravi was involved in some of the projects earlier, KSRTC related activities and all. Yeah, thank you for a wonderful presentation, and you shared your experience with the Bangalore, then Delhi and other couple of cities. Probably a lesson in Kerala, our situation is slightly different. That is what my observation. One thing is cities, the boundary is going even beyond the district, the boundaries. So, or probably I can say that one, there can be overlaps between the nearby cities. So, such cases, probably our concept is maybe the entire Kerala can be considered as a single city because it is a continuum of urban centers. So in such cases, what is your opinion? Maybe the city service alone cannot serve us. Probably, let's say, no, the entire state, we should have a policy the public transport system should be there. Now, what you have any idea about, or you have some experience in that similar the situations?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thanks for the kind words and thanks for the invite. So I'm always happy to talk about planning, scheduling. So I'm glad to talk to a new set of audience. So thanks for the invite. So on the continuum, so like I said, sir, in Bangalore also, so the city has grown so much. So you can say that you need service everywhere. But in the bus, not everybody is going from end to end. There is population and jobs everywhere, but doesn't mean that everybody is going across the city all the time. So 60% of trips are less than 10 kilometers in any metropolitan city in India. So in Kerala also, there is development everywhere, but it's not like everybody is traveling across Kerala every day. So the demand would be concentrated. So we need to understand the existing travel demand patterns of users and see whether our routes are catering to that or not. And the distinction between urban, Mofussil, intercity, I agree, is an issue. And I worked on it a little bit with APSRTC in Vijayawada, Visakhapatnam. They have a similar challenge where these cities are the district headquarters and they are cities in themselves, but many people come from around the areas to the district headquarters because there's a court, there are hospitals and everything. So in that case, so where does urban stop? Where does Mofussil start? It's a continuum. Again, I go back to the demand point, saying that we understand travel demand patterns and define our route length accordingly. And we need not have routes across Kerala. We need not look at it as entire Kerala as a city, according to me. We can look at smaller units. Maybe district can still be thought of as a unit. And within the district, you need to distinguish the urban and Mofussil service. Why do we need to distinguish urban and Mofussil? Because urban is more of a frequency issue. Mofussil is more of a service coverage issue. So in rural areas, we need service to make sure they reach district headquarters, but there won't be enough demand in each village to have a high frequency service. Whereas in urban areas, you just operate on corridors and the population densities in India are 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 people per kilometer. So there is enough demand. So if you provide high frequency service, eventually there will be ridership, which can't be said about rural areas all the time. So I would distinguish more as a hierarchy, maybe take district and then get to the Mofussil and urban classification based on travel demand parameters.
Yeah, thank you, Ravi. At NATPAC, there is a strong team working in the public transport system, and a couple of people, they have done their PhD thesis in that area, like Shaheen and La and all. And another 4 people are also in that area. My request is probably you have to extend your expertise and support the NATPAC scientists so that they can work jointly with you. So that that will be useful for the society. And thank you, Ravi, for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you, sir. No, definitely I'll be available. So this is topic which doesn't have enough attention. So I'm glad you have a team and working on it. So I'll be happy to support.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi sir. Any more queries or questions?
Thank you, sir. Now I request Dr. Anila Cyril, Junior Scientist, to propose the vote of thanks.
Dear one and all, it is my honor to deliver the vote of thanks for today's TransTech talk on case studies on demand-oriented public transport planning and scheduling in India. First and foremost, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to Dr. Ravi Gadepalli for sharing his invaluable insights and experiences. Dr. Ravi's presentation clearly highlighted the growth and demand-responsive public transportation systems in our cities. The case studies from Delhi, Bangalore, and Rajkot gave us a clear understanding of practical challenges and opportunities in route planning and bus crew scheduling. Today's talk reminded us how it is to focus on service planning and scheduling to make public transportation system efficient, reliable, and comparable to private modes of travel. The lessons shared today will surely be useful for ongoing work in this area. I also extend our sincere thanks to all participants for joining us and for your active engagement. Thank you, Samson sir, also for joining this talk today. Your presence and interest are what make these discussions meaningful and impactful. I would like to thank our director, division heads, and the organizing team for their support that made the smooth execution of this program. Once again, thank you, Dr. Ravi, for your exceptional contribution. We look forward to many more such enlightening sessions in the future. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ravi sir.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye. Bye, Ravi.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Thank you, Samson sir.